The harsh reality of living in Ireland, a country at a crossroads. Ireland, a land of rolling green fields, rich history, and a booming economy. To the outside world, it seems like a dream destination. But for those who live here, the reality is far from idyllic. Beneath the picturesque landscapes and economic growth lies a housing market so unforgiving that even those earning well above the average wage struggle to afford a home. Just a decade ago, a home in Dublin could be purchased for around 267,000 euros. Today, that same property costs over 450,000 euros, a staggering 70% increase in less than 10 years. Renting isn't much better, with prices nearly doubling in the past decade. Even a comfortable life in the city now demands an income far beyond what most people earn. This crisis isn't just about money, it's about survival. In a country where over 100,000 people are homeless, desperate measures are becoming the norm. Families are crammed into emergency accommodations. Individuals are forced into makeshift homes in remote areas, and thousands more are teetering on the edge of displacement. More people, fewer homes, the immigration challenge. Ireland isn't just battling a housing crisis, it's also grappling with a massive population surge. In the 12 months leading up to April 2024, 150,000 people moved to the country, marking a 17-year high. Shockingly, for every 4 new people arriving, only 1 new home is built. The math doesn't add up, and the consequences are devastating. The government has responded by making emergency arrangements, sometimes with drastic consequences. In 2024, authorities announced plans to house 280 asylum seekers in a tiny village of just 165 residents, nearly doubling the population overnight. The decision sparked outrage and debate about Ireland's ability to sustain this level of immigration while already struggling to house its own citizens. A generation ready to leave. For young Irish people, the dream of homeownership has turned into an impossible fantasy. A 2023 survey revealed that 70% of Irish people aged 18 to 24 are considering leaving the country in search of a better life elsewhere. Once a land of opportunity, Ireland is now facing an exodus of its own people, many of whom feel trapped in a cycle of unaffordable living costs and diminishing prospects. It's a paradox. A country that once struggled with mass emigration is now booming economically, yet its people are still leaving. How did we get here? The answers lie in Ireland's rapid transformation over the past few decades. From economic miracle to crisis mode. Not long ago, Ireland was one of the poorest nations in Europe, but everything changed in the 1990s when the country slashed corporate tax rates to just 12.5%, attracting major global players like Google, Apple, and Microsoft. The result? A booming economy, rising wages, and an influx of workers from abroad. But prosperity came at a cost. The demand for housing skyrocketed, and the supply never caught up. With property developers prioritizing high-end projects over affordable housing, and government policies failing to address the growing gap, Ireland now finds itself in an unsustainable cycle. One where economic success hasn't translated into livable conditions for its people. What happens next? Can Ireland pull itself out of this crisis, or is it heading for an even bigger disaster? With homelessness rising, wages failing to keep up with living costs, and an ever-growing population competing for limited housing, the pressure is mounting. One thing is clear: the Celtic tiger may have roared, but for many, it left nothing but a growl of frustration. The economic boom and the immigration wave. The 1990s marked the beginning of Ireland's economic miracle. Through business-friendly tax policies, the country attracted multinational corporations, creating thousands of jobs. To sustain this momentum, Ireland launched a comprehensive marketing campaign, inviting skilled workers from abroad and encouraging Irish expatriates to return. The message was simple: come home to Ireland, a land of opportunity. And it worked. The population surged as skilled professionals arrived in droves to fill these new positions. By the early 2000s, Ireland had surpassed the UK in GDP per capita and ranked #1 on the Economist's Quality of Life Index. The Irish people welcomed immigrants, eager to share their success. However, beneath the surface, a slow-moving disaster was already unfolding: deregulation and the housing market crash. In the 1980s, as Ireland struggled economically, the government deregulated the housing market to attract investment. Developers were no longer required to build affordable housing, shifting their focus to luxury properties and rental units. The policy seemed manageable as long as the economy was booming, but everything changed with the 2008 financial crisis. Demand for housing collapsed, construction halted, and thousands of skilled laborers left the country. Ireland's housing sector, once a driver of growth, now faced stagnation. But as the economy rebounded in the 2010s, another problem emerged. There simply weren't enough skilled workers left to build homes at the pace needed to meet renewed demand. The perfect storm: economic growth without housing supply. By 2017, half of Ireland's top 50 firms were American businesses, with tech giants like Google, Facebook, and Microsoft solidifying their presence. Apple alone accounted for a staggering 20% of the country's GDP, thanks to its massive European headquarters in Cork. These multinational corporations, offering salaries far above the national average, attracted an influx of highly paid professionals, driving up demand for housing and pushing property prices and rental rates to unprecedented levels. The average rent in Dublin skyrocketed, making it one of the most expensive cities in Europe to live in. Why can't Ireland just build more homes? While the logical solution seems to be increasing housing supply, the reality is far more complex. Financialization of housing. Across Western nations, real estate has shifted from being a basic necessity to a financial asset. Large investment firms purchase vast amounts of property, driving up demand and prices. In Ireland, policies enacted post-2008 encouraged institutional investors to dominate the housing market, prioritizing profits over affordability. Skilled labor shortage. With thousands of construction workers leaving Ireland after the 2008 crisis, the country has struggled to rebuild its workforce. The time and investment needed to train new skilled workers means the housing shortage won't be resolved overnight. Material costs and inflation. The rising costs of raw materials and inflation have increased construction expenses, making new housing projects less financially viable. This is further compounded by supply chain disruptions that slow down development. Public resistance and NIMBYism. Local opposition to high-density housing projects, often referred to as "not in my backyard," NIMBY attitudes, can stall or block developments. Many communities resist large-scale housing projects, citing concerns over infrastructure strain and changing neighborhood dynamics. Government housing policy limitations. Although the Irish government has introduced various initiatives to boost housing supply, such as rapid build programs and social housing projects, these efforts have not been sufficient to meet demand. The scale of the crisis requires more aggressive intervention and long-term planning. The road ahead. Is there a solution? To stabilize the housing market, Ireland needs to build at least 20,000 additional homes annually. While the government has ramped up housing initiatives, it hasn't been enough to keep up with demand. For now, Irish citizens must endure rising costs and an uncertain future. Some will wait for policies to change, while others will look abroad for opportunities. The question remains: Can Ireland overcome this crisis before it loses the very people who helped build its success?